And everybody watching, we're in the run-up to a very crucial election, and the decision that you make at this election will impact your future, the future of your children, and the future of Sri Lanka as a whole. So it's important that you are kept up to date about what's really happening in the political sphere here in Sri Lanka. And of course, to discuss these matters and much more, we've got with us today parliamentarian Dr. Nalaka Godahewa. A very good evening, Dr. Nalaka Godahewa, and welcome to the show.
Very good evening, Shalan.
So, Dr. Godahewa, to start off things, now in the run-up to an election, usually everybody gets into this business of forming alliances. I mean, there was a period of 5 years, everybody was jumping left, right, center. It's at a point now where the general public don't even know which sides the usual political actors here in Sri Lanka are on. So to start off with, now of course, you and another group of independent parliamentarians who broke away from the SLPP government have signed an agreement with the Samagijana Balawegaya to form an alliance. Now, initially you broke away with a group of 13 that included, under the leadership, of course, of parliamentarian Dallas Alahaperuma, also from the SLPP. But notably, not all 13 of you have entered into this alliance with the Samagijana Balawegaya. So have the independent group that you formed, the People's Freedom Congress, also now shattered in two?
In a way, yes, Shalan, because the 13 of us left the government and became independent because we couldn't agree with the decision to appoint Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe as the president. We opposed that and we went to opposition. But it was never a party. We were a group, a collection of individual MPs who had individual minds, who had individual beliefs, but we worked together.
Okay.
Now that the elections are due, president election is definitely coming by October, we have to take a decision whom we are going to support. So 6 of us have taken a firm decision to support Honorable Sajith Premadasa, who has already declared his candidacy at the forthcoming election. The others have not decided yet. They have not taken any part with any alliance at the moment. I think in time to come they will decide what they want to do, and my sincere hope is that they will all come to the same equation that we have arrived at.
But when initial discussions were going on between the Samagijana Balawegaya and your group of 13, headlines were that discussions are on between the Freedom People's Congress and the Samagijana Balawegaya. And it was only subsequently that 2-3 people came out and said, no, we don't know of any such discussion. There is no such discussion between the People's Freedom Congress and the SJB. And so was it an ugly breakage, or was it mutual?
Actually, that comment came from 1 or 2, not everybody. Some wished us good luck. Some spoke about that not knowing about it, which was wrong because they knew about the discussion for the last 2 years. Because from the time we broke away, we were having this discussion. They also took part on this discussion. So you can't say that we didn't know. So sometimes when media asks a question, it's the way some people answer. But the reality is, we took a risk. We took a risk to come forward and got into this alliance and fight for the victory. Some people want to wait till they are sure which party is going to win. So that's the only difference.
So, but now, Mr. Godahewa, you were part of the Viatmaga. You supported Godahewa Rajapaksa. He came into power. Then you moved out of their government. Now you're supporting Sajith Premadasa. His opponent back in 2019, who you opposed, who you said, no, their policies are wrong, Godahewa Rajapaksa's policies are correct. So, after the election, what kind of assurance is there that, you will continue to support this candidate and not move on to the next?
See, I always acted on my beliefs, my ideology, which has never changed. When I supported Godahewa Rajapaksa at that time, we believed in something and we believed that he would deliver that. And Viatmaga, that I was very much part of, believed in something, particularly the economic policy. However, when he came to power, what was delivered is not what we promised. It was different, and none of us, the main Vietmaga people, were part of the economic management team. So we were out of that, and they messed it up, and we moved out. And when we supported Gotabaya Rajapaksa, you are very correct. Honorable Sajid Premadasa was his opponent. But if anybody go back and see what we were talking about that time, personally I have never criticized Sajid Premadasa. In fact, even Gotabaya Rajapaksa didn't do. We spoke of our policies. There was no criticism of the other party. We believed in something, we spoke about that. Now, we have to take a decision based on the available candidates. Now the available candidates are Sajid Premadasa, Anukumar Disanayake, and we don't know whether it is going to be Ranil Wickremesinghe or somebody else. There will be 3 main candidates. So we have to make a choice out of the 3. So out of the 3, the policies that Sajid Premadasa is currently talking are much closer to us. It doesn't mean 100% in agreement, but very much closer to what we are talking about. So we are supporting him, and let's see how it goes.
So this is not a solid alliance that would, stand the tests of time.
No, I think what we need to do, that's why I initially said I prefer if our other colleagues also come, then it's a stronger alliance. When the more people come with similar ideas, it is much easier to push. We are today in a different situation to what we were with Gotabaya Rajapaksa government. We were new. We were juniors. We didn't have much of a say. Today's situation is different. We have a bigger voice. We are key players in this game now. So we think our chances of influencing a future government is far greater than where we were. Initially with Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
But you were a state minister under the government of Gotabaya Rajapaksa. You're still saying that you didn't have enough of a voice.
Yeah, actually, if you look at the country's government, the administration is basically the cabinet. State ministers are not part of the cabinet. You can't even submit a cabinet paper without going through the relevant cabinet minister. I was a state minister for most part of the government. Then I was appointed a cabinet minister, but the following day I resigned.
Exactly.
Because at that time I was having different ideas about the way it should be run, and I said, I give my cabinet portfolio to somebody in the opposition and form an all-party government. That is what I said. But in the next government, I believe that I'll have a better say if the alliance that we support come to power.
So, when you speak of the agreement that you have with the Samigi Janabalavegya, you said not all policies are in line with your policies. So have all those differences been ironed out? Because usually what we see is that when people from completely opposing parties, for example the SJB and the SLPP, now although you say that out of the available candidates their policies are closest to yours, back in 2019 those policies seemed quite far apart, quite different. So have you ironed out your differences? Because what usually happens in Sri Lanka is, you bet on a winning candidate, you get into power, win the election, and then try to iron out the differences, and it's too late. You're already in government, and then the only option left for you is to break away and then go and join the opposition. And what's the point in that?
No, I think the way it has worked so far with Honorable Sajid Premadasa is to our satisfaction. For example, if you take some of the key votes that we took in the parliament, particularly debt restructuring, IMF, then the central bank independence bill, and several other bills, there was a very good discussion within the group. There were some members of their team who had different views. We had our own views, and there was a good discussion amongst the key participants, and finally we came to a compromise. I think that is how it has to be. Nobody is perfectly right. We all have certain things what we think may be right, may be wrong. But with a good discussion, always the best will come out. That is what happened in those decisions. I believe when we form a government also, that's the discussion that should be there. If all of us agree on everything, then that's not the best way to move forward. We must have our differences and debate, and finally the best decision has to be taken.
So it's true that you've now moved out from the SLPP. Have you severed all ties with the SLPP? as far as that goes?
No, legally I'm still a member of SLPP because we have not resigned from the party. But we have become independent inside the parliament in expressing our views. I mean, we have not strictly gone by the party line because some of the things that the party decided we couldn't agree.
But well,
so
of
we
course,
took the risk.
Given the choices that you've made, the party is well within its rights to conduct a disciplinary inquiry and suspend you from the party, which would inevitably result in you losing your parliamentary seat as well. Not only you, all 13 of you, or whichever portion of that is part of the SLPP. Why are they doing that?
Charlotte, that is what people must understand. We took the risk. We took this decision at the risk of us being kicked out of parliament. We went to opposition, giving up our cabinet portfolios, at least myself. Definitely I gave up my cabinet portfolio. Honorable GL Pires gave up his cabinet portfolio. We would have been in the cabinet had we stayed. So we took the decision because we believe the people who voted for us would have wanted us to do it that way. So rather than thinking about ourselves, we stood by what people wanted us to do and we took the risk. So far nothing has happened and we will continue to do what we believe is the right thing. It is not for our personal benefit but for the betterment of the society.
Well, with allegations floating around that the current government is in the business of destroying political parties left, right and centre, especially those allegations coming from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, there could be some who might interpret your move out of the SLPP and then the SLPP not really taking the action that they can against you to be kind of, an act of collusion.
No, I think one reason why SLPP also has not taken action against those people became independent, there are two possible reasons. One is a fairly high number of MPs became independent. It's not only 13 of us, there were many others. Some went back, but there was a substantial number. If all those people were sacked, it would have been a very serious issue for the party. Second one is even the party hierarchy, the seniors, would have felt in a way what we did was right. I mean, we had a mandate from 6.9 million people of this country. We just stood by that mandate. We didn't do anything looking for greener pastures. We went from government to opposition. Most of the people crossed over from opposition to government, looking for something, a personal benefit. That's not what we did, and I think even the party hierarchy would have thought there's some justification in what we did.
So before we get into the real substantive matters that of course would impact the lives of our people the most, just one news item that was making headlines during the past few days, that there was a request from several government MPs and opposition MPs for them to be issued with vehicle permits, and if they can't be issued with the luxury vehicle permit or a vehicle permit at a very high price, to at least give them some vehicle permit to get some vehicle. Now, do you know of any request that has been submitted? Because they were all quoting anonymous sources.
I actually personally don't know who has made this request. I also saw on newspapers. But I think when the country is going through a crisis, we all must set an example. We should not go and ask for these things because all this time we haven't got those things. Why last minute go and spoil your name anyway? Right? I mean, people respect us for what we have done so far. I think it's good if you don't go and ask for those things at this stage. If something is due to you, it will come. But you should not go and ask for those things because at the end of the day, it is people's tax money that you are going to use.
And then people are paying quite a lot of it at this point of time.
No, because people have made sacrifices, no? The costs have gone up by almost 3 times, 4 times in everything that you spend, every service that the government is providing, rates have been increased, taxes have gone up. So when people are suffering, I think everybody has to suffer. Right now, politicians are also suffering, I mean, average politician. And you should not go and try to change that situation by asking for these things at this stage. This is not the time.
So, moving forward, since you spoke about high taxes in the economy of Sri Lanka, the negotiations on debt restructuring currently has come to a bit of a stalemate in the sense that the proposal that was put forward by Sri Lanka has been rejected and there is no consensus as of yet. The initial understanding was that we might have an agreement by the end of June. Do you think that is possible now?
No, the latest information is now government has withdrawn from the discussions because they couldn't agree to what these bondholders were asking. The discussion basically came to a point where what they were asking, the government was not willing to give. Eventually, since we so desperately need this debt restructuring, something will be agreed upon. I don't know at which point it will happen, but something will be agreed. But I think the bigger issue is not what is going to be the final outcome of this discussion. The bigger issue is how we are going to pay back these debts eventually. Because all we are going to get is some kind of moratorium. And of course some kind of a haircut, but they are going to catch up by increasing interest rates for the balance, new bonds that are going to be issued. Eventually the future generations, the future governments have to pay back. Pay with interest. So question is, what do we do now to develop our economy and make it stronger so that we are in a position to pay those? And that is something that nobody is talking about. We are completely involved in this discussion of debt restructuring without talking about how we are going to pay back the debts. We have wasted 2 years now on this. Who is talking about the contracting economy? Who is talking about falling imports, exports not growing? Who is talking about the people leaving the country? Who is not talking about investments not coming? I mean, there are so many things that we need to focus on there at this stage. We are not talking about those essential things.
But the government was talking about these things. They were saying that we are having plans, we are putting plans in place. But is it your opinion that nothing has really happened?
We faced a crisis. A crisis, Shalan, is an opportunity. Because people don't question what the government is doing. So they've got a golden opportunity to go and do something serious. But what has happened? Look at the SME sector. Completely collapsed. Right? Most of the companies have been closed. It is evident from the fact, look at imports. I just looked at the figures recently. 2021 to 2023, imports have come down by 4 billion. That is not something that you can be proud of. That means two things. One is the consumptions have gone down. Second one is companies who are using these imports to do exports. Have gone bankrupt or disappeared or reduced their output. So it is not a good thing for the economy. And look at the critical areas like the agriculture. Look the shipping sector, the other areas where you can actually go and make an impact. IT sector. Nobody is talking about those things. Right? At one point we were talking about creating a 5 billion IT sector by 2025. Now nobody is talking about that. Now India's IT exports are more than Saudi Arabia's oil exports. So we are such a good example next door. But we are not talking about those things.
We can talk about it day and night. The only problem is that when it comes to implementation, we always fail.
That is exactly the point. That is why I think what we need now is a proper government with a proper set of cabinet ministers. Look at the current cabinet. The President Ranil Wickremesinghe is unable to form a proper cabinet because of the political complexities that are involved. He can't appoint the 30 cabinet ministers who are allowed by the constitution because he wants to keep some people out. He wants to keep some people happy. There are a lot of political complexities. As a result, some ministers are having not just one portfolio, 2-3 portfolios. I always quote the example of Honorable Ramesh Patirana, Minister of Industries, Minister of Health. 2 critical ministries. And there are several other ministers like that holding 2-3 portfolios, whereas they could have been distributed and given to young, good, educated people to deal with. That is not happening. That is why I think elections should be held. A new government must come into power, and the new president must appoint a good set of cabinet ministers and give them tasks and give them goals and say, look, go after this. If you don't do that, 2 years, 3 years, that's the maximum that will be given, you will be changed.
But that was done, wasn't it? I believe under Gotabaya Rajapaksa's government, there was a massive gazette that was issued. I still remember reading that entire gazette to, well, pose questions to the guests that come on our show, but all of that was for nothing.
No, that was a gazette which I never agreed to. For example, look at his allocation of state ministries. Right?
Exactly.
Right.
No, but it was so detailed.
Not detailed, but didn't serve a purpose. If you take, let's say, a minister for Batik, right? And how much revenue that it is going to generate for the country, right? Is it a critical ministry? So in the selection of the ministry, you must decide what is critical for the government, what is important for the government.
We had a state minister for clay pottery.
So I think that was not well thought through. It was in a way a disaster, in my opinion.
So not something like that.
Not something like that. See, I don't. If you ask me, I would say we don't need state ministers. Right? Why do you need state ministers? It's another complication. But the constitution says you can go up to 30 cabinet ministers. I've done an analysis. In my opinion, you need at least 25. A lesser number won't work. Right? So 25, 30, there's no big difference. Let's say you have 30 cabinet ministers, you can have 30 deputies, because cabinet minister must have a deputy. In case something happens to the cabinet minister, there has to be a deputy. But it is the cabinet minister who must be responsible. These 30 must be assigned proper responsibilities, and they must work towards an overall target of developing our economy, and not only the economy, there are many other areas that cabinet ministers are responsible for.
So we're in the final few minutes of the show. Let's speak about the presidential election that is imminent. And you said there are 3 candidates. You've chosen to support Sajith Premadasa because his policies are more closer to yours than any other candidates. Let's speak about the remaining 2 candidates a little bit. What do you feel like when you see individuals? Now, you said that you did not criticize Sajith Premadasa. Gotabaya Rajapaksa also didn't criticize. If my memory serves me correct, I believe that to be true to a certain degree. But there were members from the SLPP who were extremely critical, even instances going below the belt, calling names. I think they don't need to be mentioned. People remember it very well. But now you see those very same parliamentarians who insulted Ranil Wickremesinghe, who called him a thief, who called him everything under the sun, now coming forward and praising him, saying that he is the leader that Sri Lanka needs, that he is the leader that can steer Sri Lanka into the future, out of this crisis. What does that make you feel? Do you think they're genuine? I'm asking you this question because they were working with you very closely at one point. They were your colleagues.
Actually, that's the sad part and the dark side of politics. There are certain politicians who can twist their words, one thing in the morning and one thing in the evening. And they are the people who can go and attack the very person that you're supporting yesterday if you have switched parties today. I think we should not do that. I think politicians must talk about policies and ideologies. And you can criticize somebody on ideology. For example, I've been criticizing the president very openly, even in the parliament, on certain ideologies. That is fine. It is nothing personal. You should not, he's experienced enough not to take it personal anyway. You should not take it personal. But unfortunately, what you say happens. It is up to the people to read these people properly and make your decision. You get a chance, you get a chance to vote. So if you're intelligent, if you monitor these people properly, you can make the right decision and the right choices when you have to cast your vote. But then again, unfortunately, that is also not happening properly in this country. That is why the same people come back again and again.
And if I remember correctly, I believe it was at the on the day that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa took oaths as president, that he said, if I fail, don't appoint the same people who you appointed, because that's what you've been doing all along, and that has failed. And despite everything that has happened, I believe at least that part of his advice could serve Sri Lankans well when it comes to deciding who to vote for at the next election. Thank you very much, Dr. Nalaka Godahewa, for joining us on our program this evening. Thank you very much to all our viewers out there for tuning in to another episode of Face to Face. As I always remind you, it's our duty to keep you informed about what's happening, and it's your responsibility to make an informed choice at the upcoming election. Take care and God bless.